All right, before we jump in, just a quick heads up. This is purely for educational purposes and definitely not financial advice. Okay, let's get to it.
So, at its heart, DeFi lending is actually a pretty straightforward concept. You've got suppliers, right? They deposit their assets to earn some interest, and then you've got borrowers who take out loans. You can kind of think of it like a super high-tech pawn shop. You put up something valuable to get some cash, but the whole thing is run by code.
Okay, so here is the biggest difference you'll see from, say, a traditional bank loan. In DeFi, borrowing is almost always over-collateralized. What that means is you have to deposit collateral that's worth more than the loan you're actually taking out. And you might be asking, why? Well, it's because in this decentralized world, there are no credit scores. This is the system's way of protecting lenders from risk in a market that can be, well, super volatile.
And that brings us to the single most important number you need to keep your eye on, LTV, which stands for loan to value. It's really just a simple ratio. If you deposit $100 worth of collateral and you borrow $50, your LTV is 50%. See? Simple enough.
But, and this is a big but, this is where the real risk kicks in. Every single asset you can borrow against has a maximum LTV, and even more importantly, a liquidation threshold. See, if the value of your collateral suddenly drops, your LTV goes up automatically, without you even touching anything. And if it crosses that threshold, well, your position is in serious danger of being liquidated.
So what does liquidated actually mean? Let me tell you, it is not a good time. It's this automated process where the system just sells off a chunk of your collateral to pay back your debt. And to add insult to injury, you almost always get slapped with a pretty hefty penalty fee on top of it all. It's how the system protects itself, but man, it's a painful lesson for the borrower. Which brings us to the #1 rule of DeFi borrowing. You have to, and I really mean this, always keep a healthy safety buffer. I've heard so many horror stories from people who borrowed right up to the limit thinking, oh, I can react in time. Then a flash crash happens and they're liquidated before they can even log in. The market just moved way, way faster than any human can.
Another thing you have to watch out for is that these rates, they are not set in stone. They're super variable. So let's say you're borrowing something at 3%, so you can go earn a 6% yield on it somewhere else. That sounds like a nice little profit, right? But what happens if the demand to borrow that asset spikes? That rate could jump to 7% overnight. And just like that, your profitable strategy is now losing you money every single second.
Now, if you hang around this space long enough, you'll hear about advanced users trying to squeeze out more returns with a strategy called looping. What they do is they deposit collateral, borrow against it, and then immediately redeposit that same borrowed asset so they can borrow even more. And they just repeat that cycle. The logic is pretty clear. It lets them earn yield on a way bigger pile of capital than what they started with. But here's the catch. While looping absolutely juices your returns, it also radically, and I mean radically, amplifies your risk. Your LTV becomes incredibly sensitive to the smallest price movements. It's kind of like building a house of cards. It looks impressive for sure, but the slightest tremor in the market can bring the whole thing crashing down in a really painful cascade of liquidation. And this is exactly why it's so important to take a step back from just chasing the highest possible yield and ask yourself, what's my goal here? Are you just trying to get some cash on hand without having to sell your assets? Or maybe you're trying to borrow some stable coins to pay for real-world bills. Having a really clear, defined purpose is honestly your best defense against taking on risk you don't need to. Ultimately, it all boils down to one fundamental question you've got to ask yourself. Are you really looking for passive income? Or are you accidentally signing yourself up for a full-time job as an active risk manager? Because, let's be honest, chasing that max APY often turns into the second. So now that we've really dug into the mechanics and the risks, in our next one, we're going to build out a simple strategy ladder to put all this knowledge to good use. We'll start with the basics of staking and build up from there. Hope to see you then.